Hi, Lisa.
Hey, Shternie, how are you? I miss you.
I miss you too. I really do.
I know.
What are we talking about today? Even though we're far away, we're close on Zoom, hey? So what are
I
we talking about
know.
today?
So today I thought we would talk about change since I've been
Ah,
going through such a big change. Missing you. So moving from Arizona to the East Coast has been, or I should say, moving from Arizona back to the East Coast, because I'm originally from the East Coast, has been a big change and a very big transition. And it's
mm,
kind of funny, Shirley, because I teach that and you teach that, right? And
yeah,
so
yeah.
last week it was not a good week. So, and even life coaches, transition coaches, all kinds of people, we still need reminders. Like I have coaches, I'm sure you have people that you talk to. And
Yeah.
I was like, what did I do? I made the biggest mistake ever. Why did I do this? And then my older
Oh,
son reminded me really nicely, of course, how about you give yourself some grace? So I thought
mm,
that I think that's a really important thing that we should talk about is that when we're
yeah.
clear, I'm extremely clear as to why my reason for moving here back to the
Mm,
East Coast, was to support
mm,
my parents. But even when you're clear and even when you
yeah.
want to do it, man, not so easy.
Change is hard. Change is hard. I think the human condition is more used to, even the word used to. When you say you're used to something, means it's a regular thing. And
Mm-hmm.
we need regular things. We know children need stability, the regular, they need to know what to expect. And as we grow into adults, we're the same. We want to know what to expect. Maybe part of that is because we want control or some semblance of control over what's going to be. And some control is a good thing. But change is hard. Change is hard. And the fact that you're there on the East Coast and I'm closer to the West Coast in Arizona, and we're 3 hours apart now, not even two, but 3 hours apart is a change for me too,
Right.
because I have to get up a lot earlier to do this podcast with you, which I love, but I am not a morning person. I'm not. I mean, I've got a smile on my face now, but it took a while to get there. And you are a morning
Always have
person.
a smile on your face. I have never seen Journey without a smile on your face.
Aw, thank you for that. That's really
It's
sweet. I'll
true.
try to remember that. So let's talk about change and why is it hard and how to deal with change. Because I've had a lot of changes in my life.
Yeah,
I
you
mean, for our
have.
listeners, they might want to know all the changes that I've had. I know I've got Israel here on my neck, but I really, last time I was in Israel was,
So you moved around a lot when you were growing up, right?
I did. I did. By the time I was 22, I'd lived in 23 houses, two continents, three countries, and many cities.
Wow. Yeah. I'm like, well, I didn't do quite that many changes, but I definitely changed husbands. So
Oh, I did too. I mean, I don't want to say change, but yeah, I am remarried now.
yeah, I guess divorce sounds a little nicer than change, but even when you do that, like even when
Yeah,
when you
yeah,
have a divorce, that's
yeah.
a huge change
Oh,
and
huge change.
huge. And both of my divorces I wanted, but so even when you want something, again, I keep coming
Mm,
back to this, like
mm,
even when you want something and you
mm,
say, I want to change, it's
mm,
hard and it can be really uncomfortable. And
mm,
I think what helps get through the uncomfortable, kind of the icky middle, is to really, first of all, you have to really be mindful of what you're listening to, like your brain.
mm,
I think your brain sometimes can be your worst enemy, right? So
mm,
you're like sitting there and you're thinking, why did I do this? Why did I do this? You have to quiet that and say, you know
mm,
why you did this. You know why you did this.
mm,
So
mm.
it's
That's a little
interesting.
bit like when you say your brain's giving you that message. I think that taps into overthinking. Because once you've thought something through, it's important to stay the course and not change. Again,
Yeah, but
change
I think
from
your
your,
brain, do you not agree that your brain, yeah, I hear what you're saying. It's like overthinking, but sometimes these thoughts just pop in your head. And what I'm
right,
saying is when those thoughts pop into your head, that's when you need to say, oh my God, stop. Like, stop
right,
listening to
right,
this. Because it's so
right.
easy to just be like,
Yeah.
what were you thinking?
Yeah. And I think that when that over when what were you thinking thought pops in your head, it's partly a defense mechanism that you have, an internal defense mechanism. Like, well, what you had before, it's like jumping from the frying pan to the fire. At least you know the frying pan. And so the familiar feels comfortable because at least you know it. But what happens if I jump into that fire and I don't like it?
Hmm.
So you're trying to sort of protect yourself, like, oh no, let's rethink this now. Let's go back to the drawing board and replan. It's a little bit of a defense and a protective thing because what if? And so it's scary. Change is
Right.
scary. And it's very interesting what the Torah says about change. There's actually a principle in the Torah that I heard a week or two ago in Shul. Um, it was connected with the parsha, the Torah portion that we read every week.
Hmm.
And there's a principle in the Torah that the Hebrew is, well, yeah, the Hebrew term is tadir v'she'eno tadir kodam. So what does that mean? It means that things that are regular take
Hmm.
precedence over things that change, which is very interesting
That is
because now we're
interesting.
actually in a time of great change. We're celebrating a huge change. Pesach, Passover, is a time that celebrates a change. The Jewish people became a nation during Passover. We actually became a nation then. And we left Mitzrayim, we left Egypt. It was a huge change. We were slaves for 210 years. That's a long time to have the same thing. And yet Hashem took us out. In that very moment when he took us out, we were starting to walk towards Har Sinai, towards Mount Sinai, where we're going to receive the Torah 50 days later and become the Jewish nation. Hashem was choosing us as it. And that was a huge change. And yet, in the Torah itself that Hashem gave us on Mount Sinai,
Hmm.
is this principle that things that are regular take precedence over things that are changing. So, what do I mean by that? For example, the example that was given was an interesting example. A Jewish man, in other words, a person from 13 years old and older, a man, he becomes a Jewish boy, becomes a man at 13 years old, he starts to wear tefillin. Those are the things they wrap around their arms and they
Hmm.
put one on their head. And inside those boxes, there's the Shema and the remembrance of how Hashem took us out of Egypt, Mitzrayim, blah, 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 and how Hashem is one. But anyway, a Jewish man has to put on tefillin every single day, except he's not allowed to put them on Shabbos or on Yom Tov, on the Jewish holidays. Um, so
And
that
why
means
is
he's not
that?
putting it
Why?
because that is that's a very good question. Exactly why? I have to find out why. But you're not supposed to put on tefillin on those days. So I
So
have to
men
find
don't
out
wear
exactly
them on the
why.
high holiday. They don't wear them on the holidays, and they
On
don't
the
wear them
Jewish
on Shabbat.
holidays and on Shabbos, yeah.
Okay, but we
And the
need to know
question
why
is,
next time. Next time we'll
yeah,
find out.
yeah, thank you. I'm going to write a note, why not? And it could be, I have some ideas, but I don't want to say what I think unless I know for sure. So, anyway, the point is that a married man will wear a tallis, a shawl, a prayer shawl,
Hmm.
every single day of the year. He will wear that every single day of the year. But the tefillin he doesn't wear every single day of the year. So the question is, if he's praying with a tallis and tefillin, which does he put on first? So looking at this principle of tadir v'she'enai tadir tadir kaidim, this principle that the regular comes first means that he puts on his tallis first, and then he puts on his tefillin. Because even though he prays with both of them, when they prepare themselves to daven, to
Hmm.
pray in shul, they put on the tefillin and they put on the tallis. Which one do you put on first? So according to this principle, the tallis goes on first because that's what you put on most regularly every single day of the year, whether it is a Jewish holiday or not, or Shabbos,
Hmm.
and then the tefillin. And there's many other things that follow this principle. So in other words, what Hashem has done for us is he gives us a lot of regular. He gives us Sunday through Friday, regular. Go to work, get up, pray, go to work. Blah, blah, blah. We do the same thing every day. But Shabbos, the seventh day of the week, is a change. But it only happens one day a week. It doesn't happen every day. So change happens, but it doesn't happen all the time. Like my life, where I lived in a house maybe at one point I was about, I don't know, 8 or 9 years old, and we were living in a house for about 2.5 years at that point, or 2 years. And I came to my mother and I said, Mommy, when are we going to move? And she like looks at me and like, no, we're not moving, because I was so used to
Right. You were so
not being
used
in
to
a
moving.
house, not being in any house for more than a year and a half or something.
Right.
Up until I was like 9, I thought this is my regular. I thought that's my regular. Okay. And so change is not a good thing to do all the time, but change has to happen. And that's where Hashem has given us this amazing life, where we have regular, but then we have some pizzazz. We have Shabbos once a week. We have Pesach once a year. We have Rosh Hashanah once a year. But the regular has to happen. So I just found that very interesting when we're thinking about change, how even in Jewish life, change is celebrated, but not every single second.
Yes, but you're saying that in Jewish life, change is celebrated. If we ask people in general, do you like change and do you celebrate change? I think people would say no. That is why people say stay stuck because they're fearful of that change. They're fearful of that. They're no, they're fearful of the unknown. Get a divorce. There's a heck of a lot of unknown in there, right? Where am I going to live? When am I going to see my kids? If you have kids, there's just a lot. For me, I left the beautiful sunshine, like sunny every single day, and even the weather has changed. And then there's an impact
Mm,
of the weather on my psyche, right? Like I
yes.
feel like I was waking up every day and I was like, oh my God, it's sunny, it's beautiful. I mean, it was hot, but it was beautiful. Now it's like since I came here, it's been raining almost every single day, literally
Yeah.
almost every single day.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
think it's great what you're saying. I think what I'm pulling out and hearing you say is there's some really good change and you can celebrate it. I believe people should look at change as a positive and not a negative. There's so many people that say to me, "Oh my God, you just pick up and go. You just change your life." And I guess in some ways I like change. The older I get, I was really happy in Arizona. My life was great in Arizona. It was probably the best 2 years of my entire life in Arizona. That's how much I loved Arizona.
Mm,
Not even
no.
kidding you. Um, and so this change that I made really wasn't for me. It was for my parents, so that I could
Mm,
be there. So there's all kinds of reasons that we change. I think what I'm hearing you say, which is great, is let's celebrate change. Let's almost look at the Jewish religion and think of, oh my God, because that's a great point, Shternie. I never thought of that, right? Like Shabbat for me is a great day. I wake up now on Fridays and I'm like, oh, it's Shabbat. Like I put my candles out. My son this week said the blessings with me, and it's just so I love Shabbat. And you're right, it changes my whole mood. I'm like, oh my God, it's Thursday night. That means tomorrow's Shabbat. So I think it's a
mm.
great way to look at change. Like, let's look at
Yeah.
it and,
Well,
and be excited about it.
when you say divorce or moving from one state to another, from a sunny state to a cloudy state, and all that, those are possibly, I mean, there are negative changes, and changes can be good or bad. We must remember that when we changed as a Jewish nation, when we left Mitzrayim, Egypt, there were a lot of Jews that did not want to change. They couldn't see further and see how the change could be good. And in fact, we learn that 4/5 of the Jewish nation did not leave Mitzrayim. Okay, 4/5 of the Jewish people wanted to stay in Mitzrayim in Egypt and continue to adopt the ways of the Egyptians and not leave. And only 20% of the Jewish nation actually left and kept on traveling through the splitting of the sea all the way to Mount Sinai to receive the Torah 50 days later. So change is scary. You just don't know what's on the other side. No matter how much you prepare yourself, you don't know what's on the other side. You don't know how things could be better. I mean, I have lived most of my life in Australia. I happen to live now in another place that also begins with an A and ends with an A, Arizona. But it's the other end of the world, and I know I don't sound Australian, and I'll explain that another time. But the point is that you never know. I mean, would never have imagined that I would live in Arizona. Was to me like some funny song, Arizona, or what's his name? That comedian, that actor. Steve
Dude,
Martin, right?
when I
Steve
lived in
Martin, he had this
Arizona,
funny Arizona thing going or something like that. I mean, I didn't really, I mean, New York, everybody knows New York, they know Los Angeles. Who knows Phoenix? Like, oh, Phoenix, what isn't that a bird? Like, what is, So who would ever imagine that I would be living in Arizona? And yes, I do love the fact that the sun shines every single day. I don't care if it's 118 degrees. Yes, I do care when I'm walking in there on Shabbos. But I'm just saying, like, it beats, like you say, that cloudiness of the East Coast where I lived for a while before we moved here. You just don't know what's going to be on the side of the door of the change. And so you can prepare yourself all you want, but ultimately, there's a pasuk in the Torah that says Hashem mitzadei gaver, kainenu, that Hashem Hashem sets the footsteps, guides the footsteps of a person. You never know where you're going to be, but for some reason, I'm living here. And if I look for the good, I can look and say, all right, there's a lot of good here around here. And I can try to plug into that to see how that change is good. For some reason, I'm actually meant to be living here. And you're right now meant to be living in New Jersey. Now, you don't know why. I know you keep on saying, like, what is this meant to be teaching me? What is Hashem trying to tell me to learn from when I'm here? But change,
I also changed my business, right? So there's been a lot of
mm,
change in my life in a very short period of time.
yes,
So my, as a sole entrepreneur, that's changed. Before I had a
yes,
full-time position. So yeah, every day I'm like, okay, so what am I supposed to be learning here? Because it's
yeah,
having your own business is a lot tougher than I thought it would be. But I read something the other day and I loved it. It was something like it could be one email, one phone call. You don't know that something that's easy is going to change your life, but you don't
yeah,
know when that change is gonna happen. So
right,
I think for the folks that are listening, I think what we want to say really is it can be scary, but it also can be celebrated, right? It's something that we should
definitely,
look at and say, okay, so we
yeah,
took the risk. Have the courage, take the risk, and don't listen to don't start overthinking it, because when you
yeah,
start overthinking it, that's when you start thinking, oh my God. And I love what you said. Like it's a defense mechanism. Like, oh my God, what did I do? Just put that idea out of your head.
right.
But I love what you said about let's celebrate the change.
Well, I love what you just said about that just one more thing. When you come into like simple thing in life, like, oh my, the room is a mess, or the kitchen is full of dishes everywhere, and you just don't know, oh my gosh, you look at it like you're like, calamity. I don't know where to start. Or
Right,
even huger, these poor people who have suffered from the fires
right,
or the hurricanes, and like their houses are absolutely demolished, their lives are.
right.
Where do you start? Where do you start? So let's take the easy one about the kitchen being a mess. If you just do one thing, and sometimes when you don't know where to start, just randomly pick one thing. And very often, the action can lead to better thinking.
Mm-hmm.
So just do one thing. Okay, like, I don't know. Okay, let me just start on this corner of the counter. Once you start doing that, and once you're doing it, very often you think, hey, wait a minute, I'm going to finish this corner, but then a better thing would be for me to start going over there next. And
Yep.
then as it goes, the plan unfolds in a more clear way. You get clarity. But if you stop yourself and, like you say, take courage. So if you just take the courage to take that one step and just do one thing, I think that's the key. That would be my mantra, is one thing. Okay, it doesn't have to be the best. It's just that one thing. And
It's
then
the
you
one
start,
thing, it's the action. It's all about the action. It's like
yes,
when all the boxes came
yes,
into my place, it was like,
yes.
oh my God, that's kind of like life, right? You have all these boxes you can unpack. I was like, all
Uh-oh.
right,
I
what's the
don't hear
one
you. You're
room
you're
I
very
want to get?
interrupted here.
Can you hear
Okay,
me?
go ahead. Yeah, because
Um,
something happened in it for a
I was like,
second.
what's
Go
the
ahead.
one room I can unpack? So I went with the
Yeah.
kitchen. Let's get the kitchen done. Let's get the kitchen done. The kitchen's done. And next thing you know, it's the bedroom. I'm sorry. So it's always, but I also think it always comes back to what I always say is get clarity, right? What is the one thing? What's the one thing that you can do today? And it doesn't need to
Mm,
be big. It just needs to be
mm,
one little step.
mm.
So I think we left everybody with some great ideas about change. I think I'm going to celebrate my change all week. And maybe that will even put me in a better frame of mind. And I'll stop saying to God, what am I supposed to be learning? And I'll say to God, thank you. Thank you for
Right,
this.
right.
Thank you for this.
Just the one thing also, like if you just, I very often say I was a principal for many years also, and I would say to the teachers, like, as a guide when you come in, I'd say, put a smile on your face. Sometimes, like you said, the action, just put a smile on your face and you start to feel easier.
You do.
you know,
You
it does
do.
start to
Yeah.
feel easier, and the action really has an effect on your emotions. It's funny you said this about this one thing also, because last week somebody called me and was talking to me about, she's a very, very disorganized person. She says this about herself. She's very disorganized, very hard for her to prioritize. She said she's got many priorities. Well, that's what prioritize means. Is you have many priorities, but what are you going to do first of all those
Right.
priorities? And she was saying, well, okay, I don't know. I said, well, just make a plan and just work with that first plan and try to do one thing. Yeah, but
Hmm.
I have this, but I have that. I said, yeah, but that's like kicking yourself, shooting yourself in the
Hmm.
foot, and you're really ensuring a negative result by having all of that together. So just do one thing, plan for tomorrow, one thing, plan what you think is the best time. And she did that. She sent me a little schedule of like just a few things that she wanted to start doing. And she said, you know what? Now that I've done this, I realize actually that a better time for me to do these things would be this and this. So it's the same thing. It's like that one action led to more clarity of mind
Yep.
so that she could accomplish a change more positively and effectively for herself. So I think it's that, like, not like shooting for the stars. We're all human. We're not Hashem. We're not God. We can do what we can do. And you just started on your kitchen. You got your kitchen done. And you're going to have to send me pictures of your place because I
I
really want to
will.
see
And
how
I
it
think it's a
looks.
great place to wrap it up to say one step
Yes.
and just like I love what you said, Shternie, just do what you can do. And to all our listeners, I hope you're having a great week and we will be back.
Yes. Bye, everybody.